Hey there, welcome back to the channel. My name is Carrie with Blues City Pickin. If you are new here, we are a part-time picker that goes around to yard sales, rummage sales, thrift stores, and attempts to find things to flip for a profit on eBay. This is a great week because I'm going to break my what sold down into two different videos because my sales were so good. So this first video is going to be Ching number 32 part 1, which will be including, let's see here, 22 of the 45 items that I sold last week. This is for April 6th through April 9th. So 4 days at the beginning of last week. My total gross sales for that part was $629. The sales price that was agreed upon with the buyer, excluding shipping and taxes, was $460. I was $88 into these on the purchase price, and there was one or two items that were the majority of that. And then my profit for those 4 days was $293.46. So average sale price, gross sales was at almost $29. And then my average profit per item was $13.34, which is absolutely amazing. I had one thing that sold that had only been listed a day. And then I had something that had been listed for 333 days. The average was 99, so not bad as far as average amount of time in the store. So pretty happy with that. I will cover the breakout of the types of things, like the percentages at the end like I normally do, but let's go ahead and get into this. So the first thing that sold was a pair of Nike Blazer toddler shoes. I picked these up at the Goodwill bins back on my very first trip. I was 94 cents cost of goods at that trip. These sold for $24, so I made $20.20 after 16 days. Next item was an Abercrombie and Fitch college vault. It was a 1995 repop of a t-shirt. A friend of mine gave this to me with a closet clean out, so I have nothing into it. Buyer paid $11.25, and so I have $9.19 of profit after just 16 days. And when I talk about the buyer paid for this particular portion, that is the sales price excluding shipping and taxes. I do not do free shipping, and so that's what's in there, and that's what I mean. Next up was this Eddie Bauer shoulder bag. It was olive green. I actually picked this up at Goodwill for $5.99 last summer. It had been sitting a while, so when I got an offer for $11.60, I accepted it, and I made $3.27, but it did take 251 days to sell. Next item is a pair of Crocs. These were the Brooklyn low wedge platform sandal. They were a little bit scuffed up and not in the best size at a size 7. I had $7.33 into these from Goodwill. They sold for $24.65, and so I made $11.39 after 35 days. If you find Crocs that are not like the traditional clogs, I've had a lot of luck selling those kinds of Crocs. So take a look at those. If they're in good condition and you can get them for a decent price, go ahead and pick them up, because I think almost every single pair of Crocs that I've bought so far this year has sold within 60 days of me listing them. So that's been nice. Next up is a SheFit sports bra. This came from a home clean out. Buyer paid $25 for this, and so I made $20.64 after 31 days. Next item is a Cheeky Chompers. This was a bamboo muslin security blanket / lovey. This came from the Goodwill bins, and I had 94 cents cost of goods that day. Buyer paid $8, and I made $4.42 after just 8 days. I had a couple comments from folks on the last video, or at least one about like the low dollar sales. sales? And my response to that is I work on averages. And so you heard me at the beginning say that my average was $13.34 per item in profit. The Cheeky Chomper blanket, I maybe spent 10 minutes on it. I found it at the bins. It was in good condition, threw it in the wash with other stuff, pulled it out, found it, pictured it, and it took about 10 seconds to ship. So I'm okay with spending 10 minutes and making $4.42. Other people, that may not be what they want to do, but that's okay. Like, you've got to do what works for you with the time that you have available and how much you want to spend on your business. Like, things that work for me, they may not work for you, and that's okay. So don't fret, do what works for you, and just move on. Next up is this vintage OEM Atari cartridge slot connector. I got this out of a Whatnot lot back in December. I bought a huge Whatnot lot of Atari parts. I have about $1 into this one. It sold for $14.90 and I made $11.56 after 116 days. Next up is another Ben's Find. This was a set of 2 melamine plates. It was vintage Disney's Hercules. My cost of goods this particular day was $1.48. They sold for $14, and so I made $7.02 after just 8 days. Next item is a Free People long sleeve crew neck pullover sweater. I actually picked this up at Plato's Closet back in January during their 70% off sale. I paid $3.60 for it. The buyer paid $21.55, so I made $14.64 after 70 days. Don't sleep on your local Plato's 70% off sale. There are some gems, and that was even like 2 weeks into the sale. We'd had a lot of sickness in the house, so I hadn't been. And in addition to that, I found another like Free People dress that I've got listed and a couple pairs of shoes that I made good money on right away. So keep a lookout for your Plato's, sign up for alerts for when they do their sales, and head in there and see what you can find. Next up is a lot of 5 Oneida Arbor Rose stainless steel dinner forks. I picked these up at the Goodwill back in March in like a huge bag of flatware. I have $1.10 into these. They sold for $19, and so I made $14.25 after just 4 days. Next item is a Mr. Jack board game. It was from the brand Huracan. It was complete, even though it was used. I paid $4.19 for this from Goodwill back in February. It sold for $24, and so I made $15.13 after 37 days. I would recommend, if you see a board game that looks weird and it's not by one of the main manufacturers, take a look at it. I mean, you will be pleasantly surprised that some of these used board games can sell for $24. And yeah, just take a look at them. You'll learn what to look for the more you sell of them, and I've had good luck with them. So I will keep my eyes peeled for these still going forward. Next up is a vintage Westmoreland white milk glass vase. I put this in my 40% off sale. I currently have a 40% off sale on some really old inventory that is in my store. So if you are interested, go in there and get yourself a raging deal, because I'm trying to clear out some of the old stuff. I paid $2 for this at an estate sale last June. It sold for $14.22, and so I made $8.19, but it did take 297 days to sell. Next up is this vintage Peter Rabbit, also sold on my 40% off sale. It was from 1986. It had music, so it turned and cranked and the music would go. I had a quarter into it from an estate sale, like I said, last March. I think I said last March. It was in my 40% off sale for a reason. It sold for $10. There must have been something funky with the shipping because I made $11.32 after 309 days. Next item is a Love Every toddler matching grid with animals. I saw these when I was listing a Love Every quilt that I sold about a month ago. I picked up this and some other Lovevery at a church yard sale back at the end of March. I'm in it for $3.50. It sold for $15, and so I made $7.36, but it sold within a day. So, and it was easy to picture, easy to ship, easy to list. Next item is a Kate Spade floral tulip dress. I don't know if this was in my 40% off sale or not, but I got an offer for $20 and I had $1 into it from a yard sale last September. So I went ahead and took that. So I made $22.22 after 197 days. Again, there must have been something funky where I had overestimated the cost of shipping on that one. Next item is a pair of Matisse black leather like riding boots. They were a good size. They were a size 9. I paid $7.13 from these at City Thrift back on January 1st of this year. They sold for $44 and a penny. So I made $27.24 after 90 days. Next item is another thing that I picked up from that church rummage sale. This is a Trivial Pursuit Lord of the Rings Collector's Edition. I paid $1 for this. It was complete except for one little piece. So it was not going to affect gameplay as that one little piece was actually an extra. The buyer paid $18, and so I made $14.65 after just 9 days, which is absolutely wonderful. Next item, this was a pea find at our local Goodwill. Back in, I think January, we found it. Yep, middle of January. We paid $7.19 for this Pottery Barn Love Shack Fancy Collab backpack. It sold for $47. And so we made $30.17 after 79 days, which is just absolutely amazing. Next item is a dandy animated plush. It was from Halloween and it did not sell during Halloween last year, so that was kind of a bummer, but I did pay $2 for this in a estate sale last July. It did work. I had video in my listing. It sold for $18.95, and so I made $13.90 after 272 days. Next item is a Vera Bradley duffel bag. This was in a set of 3 that I picked up at an estate sale the same day of that church rummage sale. You may have seen it in a haul. I got 3 pieces for $36. So I spread the cost evenly over them. This was the least valuable of the 3 pieces. It was a small duffel bag, so I had $12 assigned to this. It sold for $26.10, and so I made $8.96 after just 5 days. I've already sold the larger duffel as well, and I think I'm clearing like almost $30 on that. And then the travel bag, I should clear another $30 on that. So I'm okay with just 9 on this because the bulk with all 3 of them together, I'm gonna make, $60, $70. So pretty happy with that flip. For Vera, look up the pattern, especially vintage Vera. If it's retired and it's a rare pattern, it's worth it. Some of the newer stuff is overproduced, oversaturated, etc. But when I looked up this pattern, there were not a lot of them listed. This was luggage, not just purses, also sell better. So just do your research on Vera and learn and know what to pick up, and you'll be good. Next item came from the Goodwill bins. I had to rescue her. She was in not great condition, but no regrets. Picked her up for 88 cents was my average cost of goods that day. This was a Vogue baby doll. I think it was a baby deer doll. It was vintage. It was from 1964. If you find a baby doll, the thing to do is pull up their hair in the back, if they have hair, and look for the imprint on the back of their neck. It will usually have the brand, the year, etc. on it. If you don't see it there, and it's vintage. Also, if they have clothes on, look on their back. You can also find printing, etc. for baby dolls. Most of them are not big money, but I didn't mind rescuing her from the landfill. That was her next stop. She had already been looked over a couple times, so I just went ahead and snagged her for 88 cents. She sold for 10 bucks. And so I made $9.37 just 2 days after I listed her. So a surprisingly quick flip, probably because I took an offer for 10 bucks because I just wanted to rescue her and get her to a new home. So happy with that flip. And then last but not least, on the first 4 days of the week, this was a large hand-carved wooden turtle figurine. It was flying, so it had its flippers out, as you'll see in the picture. This was the most expensive buy-in I had on an item, and it has been in my inventory for almost a year. I got an offer for, or maybe I had just lowered the price, I think, to $39 to see if I could get rid of it and just get my money back, because I had $24.15 into this. Things you don't do again in your reselling career. I had picked this up at an online auction back in May of last year when I was dabbling more in those. I've kind of gotten away from them a little bit because the deals were not there as much and the buy-ins were too high, and the tails on some of them were so long that it just wasn't worth it for me anymore. And you have to go to a specific location to pick it up or have it shipped. And so it just got to be a little bit too much for my schedule to make those work. But happy that this one is gone, and I made a whopping $8.37 on it after 333 days. Don't do what I did. All right, as far as where the $300 in profit came from, about 40% of it from Goodwill, 4% from Whatnot, auction 3%, estate sales 14%, home clean out 10%, yard sale 15%, and like other thrift stores were 14%. Back to my normal percentages, I had about 57% of my profit come from clothing, and that includes shoes and accessories, so like the duffel bag and things like that. That's where the profit from that went. About 20% from toys, including vintage and modern, and that is what I like to sell, or like toys and collectibles. So between those two, I had about 30% of my profit from that. And then about 12% from home decor, etc., other things in the house. So not a bad week. Curious if other folks are experiencing the same kind of uptick in sales on eBay. And if you like this kind of content, I would appreciate it if you would give me a like and a subscribe and a thumbs up. And give me a comment on how your sales are doing. If you have any questions for me, go ahead and drop those in the comment too. I enjoy learning from you guys and then answering your questions as well. So I will see you with part 2 later this week. So see you in the next one. Thanks so much. Bye.